And we're live. Welcome to the latest episode of Be the Bank, the FIXnotes show, the best place on the internet to learn about the distressed secondary mortgage market. Thank you so much for being with us today. Got an awesome show in store for you today, how to make a living in mortgage notes. But before we get into it, just want to thank everybody who tuned in to FIXnotes.com/buy this week to sign our non-disclosure agreement. So thank you so much, Santosh, William, Anand, Maria, Tasha, Leonard, DJ, and David. You guys are all set with the one exception. Santosh, I did not receive your signed non-disclosure agreement yet. You can check your inbox. You'll have a right signature document to sign to get access to the latest portfolio of mortgage notes for sale. To the rest of you, the other 7 investors who signed up, good job. You are under NDA. The non-disclosure agreement is signed. We can start sharing confidential information so you can analyze our assets currently for sale. So let's get into today's show, how to make a living in mortgage notes. So without further ado, let's go. Oops, wrong order on that one. All right, it's episode 16. Let me turn on my light here. And we're starting, of course, with the overview of the industry. Made a little note today of today's topic, making a living. And then we're gonna go through the tech that enables this business to be operated remotely from anywhere in the world. And then, of course, some asset acquisition opportunity updates on the latest inventory for sale. Then we'll talk 2 case studies, as always, and then we'll get into giveaways. All right, so to begin, let's just switch the slide here and talk about our sponsor. As always, FIXnotes, my company, sponsors the show. We put all this content together for free. And we also have a free course over on FIXnotes.com/learn. So if you're a first-time viewer today, I would highly recommend heading on over to the course. All we ask of you after you go through the first 2 modules, or maybe 3 modules, is to put in your email address, and then you'll be given access to all of this amazing content. Really the best resource in the note business to learn this industry and to get started, and it's totally free. So please get on over there and review the course. And then we've got the industry update. So industry overview always starts with the news of today, what's going on in the market. We have an industry news aggregator where we track all of the latest developments. And I did want to touch on 2 specific stories today, and I'm going to pull down the audio on that music. Today, though, we've got 2 articles. One I wanted to talk about is the CFPB announcing a nationwide crackdown on abusive debt collectors. So a theme of this show that we started with in the early episodes, and I made sure to hammer home, and I hope I'm still making this clear. At the end of the day, this business is about helping borrowers. It's about coming to solutions on deals that are really the bank's having trouble getting these deals resolved, and as entrepreneurial investors, we're able to make a difference. So I don't think you guys are going to have any problem with this crackdown on abusive debt collectors, because I teach my students here on the Be the Bank show to treat borrowers with compassion, with respect, and at the end of the day, work towards a win-win resolution. So that kind of ties in with the second article I wanted to mention about the zombie apocalypse ahead for vacant properties. And this is kind of one of the main detriments, the main side effects of distressed debt on bank balance sheets. The overwhelming default rates when crises like the one we're currently in happen end up hurting these neighborhoods for a strange reason, actually. It's because the foreclosures are not going forward. When foreclosures are not progressing and the properties do not become REOs and then are sold to a new homeowner that has the capability of keeping up with the property, these properties sit vacant. A lot of times the borrowers leave the property, it becomes overgrown, it becomes dilapidated, and it affects the values of all the properties in the neighborhood. So as note investors in this space, one of the big ways that we can improve communities is by working with the borrower to understand their intentions with the property and then helping that property become something that's actually of value to a certain community. So if the borrower does not want to live in that home anymore, putting that home in the hands of an investor who can fix it up, or a retail home buyer who can make that property their home, those are going to be the ways that, as a note investor, we're able to bridge the gap between the bank's inefficiencies with processing the high default rate and the borrower's need to come to some financial resolution. So I don't want to read these articles right now with you, but just wanted to use them as a talking point there to hit home the fact that at the end of the day, we are helping borrowers in this space, and that's got to be your main goal when you start collecting on these accounts. All right, so now that we've hit the news, we want to talk about market pricing. It's the end of the third quarter here, and there's definitely some updates coming very soon to this market pricing overview because I've got a bunch of new bids, and I actually pulled up. We'll talk about this when we get into the assets for sale, but I've got 112 offers on our latest portfolio that came in the last 7 days. So a lot of great intelligence to base pricing decisions on. And we'll distill all of this recent market activity into our market pricing update for the beginning of the fourth quarter. So let's start with some events in the industry overview. Now that we've covered our bases with the news and the pricing overview, and we're not going to get into too much detail. We talk about that pricing overview every single week. So if you have any questions about the third quarter pricing, go back to the previous weeks to get my insight there. We've got a couple events coming up, nothing new added from last week, but just to give you a high level overview, we've got the Paper Source Seminar, October 1st through 3rd. Then we've got a bunch of speakers that I've done a lot of business with. So a good crew showing up for Paper Source. Actually, that was one of the first events that I was attending in person 8 years ago when I started in this space. I'm going out to Las Vegas for the Paper Source Seminar. Was a highlight of the year. But nowadays it's all virtual. We've got another distressed note convention. This was also an in-person event in Newark, New Jersey. Now it's also virtual. And you'll see I'm in there. I'm going to be speaking at this event. I don't know what I'm speaking on yet, so please leave a comment if you have any ideas for a new audience. Since you guys come back and visit this show every week, we're kind of building some rapport and building off the knowledge we learned in previous episodes. What should I talk about when I'm going in front of a new audience who hasn't really been exposed to the show yet? Let me know if you have any ideas there. We've got another event on October 13th run by IMN. This is the NPL Notes and Default Servicing Conference, totally free for investors. By the way, the last event was free for the partial package. The previous event does cost money to go to Paper Source. And then there's a great panel, bunch of speakers showing up there. So that's going to be an awesome event as well. Finally, I think this is the last event. October 16th and 17th is the Distressed Mortgage Expo. This one's kind of expensive. This costs $300. And I was actually approached to be a speaker at this event, and then I was told it was going to cost a bunch of money to be a panelist, and I was thinking they should be paying me. But that's besides the point, because you can get my content here for free every single week on the Be the Bank show. But if you are interested in any of the topics and the speakers at this event, I would highly recommend checking out their website. All of the links to all of these events are in the description below, so you can get some more information, do your own due diligence. Oh yeah, bunch of stuff, bunch of speakers. But let's move on to the non-performing waterfall evaluation. This is a nice launching pad to discussing a bunch of different topics in the note space and how you can optimize your due diligence process when you're analyzing assets for sale. So this workflow kind of walks you through all of the different decisions along the way and the pricing factors that are related to those due diligence decisions. So in the previous episodes, we've went through pretty much every single point along the way. Of course, secured versus unsecured at the top is the most important. An unsecured debt is no longer attached to a collateral, to real property that can be foreclosed upon. Unsecured debt can be pursued for the personal liability because a borrower that signs a promissory note is still on the hook, but that personal liability can be wiped out by bankruptcy. So unsecured debt is treated, it's priced very inexpensively, and it's a whole different niche in this space. A lot of investors don't even look at it. Whereas secured debt is where we focus in this space, and that's non-performing mortgage notes typically that are secured by real property. And this week, because the next step is first versus second liens, I'm going to revisit a previous slide about first versus seconds and why I prefer second position loans. So if you've already caught this in a previous episode, I think it was like, I don't know, episode 6 or 7. Actually, I think the title is called First versus Second, so you guys can find that. But I wanted to give just a high-level overview in case you missed it, in case you're just getting started with us in the last couple episodes. So just to give you the high level, senior liens are more expensive due diligence process. It costs about $250 to $500 to review a senior lien, and that's because I would not recommend buying a first position loan without ordering title and a BPO, a broker's price opinion, 2 documents, 2 reports, which can cost about $100 each. Typically, we don't order those reports in junior position, so it really adds to the cost of analyzing a senior lien. Seniors can be wiped by taxes or the homeowners association in super lien states. Even though you're in a first position as a mortgage holder, there's stuff ahead of you there. There's the county with the taxes or the different jurisdictions, and then there's also the homeowners association if the property resides in an HOA. Senior liens are more often resolved through the property, so as a first position lien buyer, I would definitely be comfortable taking back the home if that's going to be the end result. That's going to be the best bet if you do end up in that position, to be prepared to take back the collateral, to take back the asset, the property. They're more expensive typically for first liens because they are in senior position, and I have found that for the same pricing you're going to be secured by lower quality collateral. On our previous offering, not the latest offering, I'd have to check the metrics there, but when I created this slide previously, we had a $96,000 average fair market value for the first position loans, and then a $347,000 average fair market value for the second position. Let's take a quick look at the birds, guys. Oh, we just missed them. My camera cuts off at 30 minutes, this bird feeder, so we want to make the most of it. Let's check our other feeder while we're at it. Nothing, but we're going to keep with the content for now. We'll get to some bird watching in a little bit if we see anything good. All right, so the junior liens, on the other hand, kind of have advantages over the seniors that you might not expect. So they're cheaper for due diligence because when you're buying a large portfolio of junior liens, you can sometimes get away with not ordering BPOs and title reports. For starters, your seller will normally rep and warrant the lien position. So as a junior lien holder, you can have some confidence in the fact that you are in second position if in your purchase sale agreement, the seller is representing the fact that it is in second position. So you can avoid title reports a lot of the time. BPOs, I think, are overkill in junior liens because and we'll get to that in a minute, junior liens resolve more often than not through the borrower and not through the property. So understanding that the collateral is so much more important in first position deals. Junior liens can be wiped by the senior lien, taxes, and the HOA. So you've got one more level of threat to your lien position because not only can the taxes or the homeowners association wipe you out, but also the senior position lien can wipe you out. The good news there, though, is that senior liens are typically the ones who are the first line of defense against the taxes or the homeowners association. So because like 99% of residential senior liens escrow taxes and insurance, you don't often have to worry about delinquent taxes when you're buying second liens that are secured by current first liens. So if the first position debt in front of your second is performing, the borrower is making payments every single month, then they've probably also escrowed, putting those balances in an account that pays off the taxes through the senior lien servicer. That keeps the taxes current so that the senior is not at any risk of being wiped from a tax foreclosure, while also protecting the junior lien. So the junior lien is kind of, it has some advantages of being the smaller secondary position, whereas still having the equity and the collateral to secure the debt. So really like juniors for that reason. Like I said, it's borrower-centric resolutions, and we talk about emotional equity because second position loans, since they resolve through the borrower, we can really make some inferences about the borrower's intentions based on the other liens. If the borrower is paying their first lien but not the second, they most likely want to stay in that home. And even if you're buying an underwater, a negative equity junior lien, but the first is being paid, you have some idea of the borrower's emotional attachment to that property. Even though it might be underwater on paper, they're going to make their payments because this is their home and this is where they're going to stay. And then finally, there's greater discounts. It's easier to diversify in junior liens. can buy a lot more for the same amount, and then have those different experiences. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but diversifying between seniors and juniors, and then within those niches, within those subsets of the portfolio, diversifying even further to buy seniors that are secured by vacant land, for example, or juniors that are behind non-performing senior liens. To start out by expanding your preferences and understanding these different subsets of a portfolio of mortgage notes, you'll be able to define your own niche and then be able to move forward as a larger buyer. Because at the end of the day, the buyers who are able to acquire the largest portfolios are able to take on all different types of debt and not just one specific subset. But it's important to understand these differences between seniors and juniors as you do make those pricing considerations. All right, so today's episode is about making a living with mortgage notes. And I've got a little picture of a woman sitting on the beach with her laptop, and that's really all you need. If she's got a Wi-Fi connection, or maybe her phone has a personal hotspot, she could be answering emails and getting deals done right on the beach. It's a super cool part of this business, and I think just the 21st century and the internet has allowed so many different businesses to operate in this type of way. And I think we've got a little friend. He's on the other side. Oh, there he goes. Nobody yet. All right, so I broke this down into three main categories, making a living in notes. First is to define your ideal lifestyle, and then we're going to talk about money versus time and how to make a decision based on your own resource. And then finally, we're going to run some numbers to see what it takes to get to a point in your note investing career where you can live passively off of note income. So to start, ideal lifestyle. A really great thing to focus on to just begin this conversation is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is slightly out of date. This was created in 1943 by Abraham Maslow, I think is his first name. And it was kind of a definition of a human's progression to reaching self-actualization. And there's been some revisions to this and some updates in current times. But for the sake of this discussion, I think we can just look at this original chart. So it starts at the bottom with your physiological needs and your safety needs. Those are your basic needs to remain alive as a human being. And then we move up to the physiological needs, that's the psychological needs, esteem and belongingness and love. Those are the next tier. Once you've fulfilled your basic necessities, you can move on to building relationships and building that esteem, a sense of self-confidence. And then finally, reaching self-actualization is becoming the best version of yourself. We can't all just reach that. I don't know if anybody is fully self-actualized, but it's definitely something to strive to. And to understand this before you jump into a new career in mortgage notes or any entrepreneurial pursuit, it's important to understand if the end goal is really something that you can live with and that you want. For example, I wouldn't have started presenting this show and now on week 16 if I didn't think that I would enjoy it and continue this progression. So it's important to think about this as you start to define the business that you're creating. So self-actualization, there's 4 check boxes, and we've already talked about these. 4 check boxes that you need to fulfill before you even get to that point of self-actualization. You're physiologically comfortable, you're psychologically comfortable, you're socially fulfilled, you've got the self-esteem and that inner confidence, and then you can try to reach your highest state. So we'll check off all of those. We're safe, secured, we're socially fulfilled, we've got self-esteem and inner confidence. And then there's these 8 behaviors leading to self-actualization. So this was a follow-up by Maslow in the book, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. And I'm not going to read through all of this right now, but you can pause it and read them if you'd like. But it's kind of the roadmap to reaching self-actualization once you have fulfilled all of those basic needs and those relationship needs. So I'll just leave this on the screen for a sec. You can definitely pause it and read it. But I think number 2 is maybe the one that I want to highlight the most. To make the growth choice instead of the fear choice a dozen times a day is to move a dozen times a day towards self-actualization. Self-actualization is a growing process, and there's a little tufted titmouse. I just put a bunch of new feed in there, so hopefully we're going to get some new friends. So at the end of the day, having that growth mindset is what allows you to reach your fullest potential. And a lot of people do operate from that fear mindset, or some would call it a scarcity mindset, where you're fighting for the scraps and it's you versus everyone. Whereas a growth mindset and an abundance mindset is how you can understand that there is enough opportunity for everyone, and by applying your own methods, by applying your own ingenuity to the situation, you can create value and you can improve yourself. So the growth mindset is super important. That's why I started presenting this show when it was pretty rough, and just kind of iterated from there, because the only way to actually grow is to make that conscious decision every single day. One other point on self-actualization that I think is really important to understand, and maybe I'm going to talk about this later, but I'm going to talk about it now. If you have a sense of yourself that is based on some profession or some specific action, then you need to live that action. For example, if I'm a writer, and I tell myself I'm a writer, telling yourself something like that, telling yourself that what you are, that's going to support your goals. So telling yourself that you're a writer is great, but until you actually write every single day, make it a practice to write, you will not become what you're trying to become. So for me, I might say I'm an entrepreneur. But if I just say that, I'm not doing anything. As an entrepreneur, I mean to be focused on growing and building my business and adding value to the counterparties that I work with. So self-actualization is one way to put it, but the other way is to define what you want to be and then take the action that is the definition of the thing you're trying to be. If I'm a presenter of this show, I need to do that action every single week. So just something to think about. I know I didn't verbalize that exactly how I was thinking it, but I hope you get the gist. All right, so now let's get into like the nitty gritty here, the monthly expenditures and the capacity of your own efforts. So these are questions to ask yourself, just like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization was all about reaching inward, finding out what your goals and how you can reach those goals really looks on paper. But at the end of the day, how much do you need to maintain your ideal lifestyle? And can you reduce your expenses without sacrificing your satisfaction and your enjoyment of life? And then on the flip side of that, your capacity of efforts. What value-adding activities do you enjoy doing the most? And then how much do you actually want to work? And what's great about this is it won't feel like work if it's something you really love. So making those decisions, how much you can work per day, per week, per month, and per year, how many vacations you want to take, and then how much you actually need to earn are going to be like the main levers to determine how much effort you need to apply, how many notes you need to acquire to build a passive income portfolio, and how you're going to approach building this business. So definitely reflect on these questions as you take the next step in your note business. So once you've defined your ideal lifestyle, we're going to drill in a little bit more onto your capacity of your effort, and that's the time versus money equation. So let's say you have more time, because that's probably where most of us are going to start out. You can definitely jump in right away with more money and acquire a portfolio, but I think that learning this business with the time that you spend is going to have much greater effects long term. So even if you have the money to start buying notes right away, you should still kind of reflect on these opportunities when you have more time. So these are some ideas on how to start to lay the foundation for your note business when you just have time. First off, creating content for marketing, branding, and networking. I talked about this last week, and it's huge because even as a total novice, a total beginner in this space, you can create content. You can create a diary, a journal of your note investing progress, of your career learning the space, and share that on social media or with videos on YouTube to basically connect like-minded individuals. Also get a lot of great input from other investors who are further along in the space, but to show the growth that you are experiencing in a tangible way on a regular basis. Great way to start in this space. Seek internships or employment or mentorships. Super huge to build that network and to understand other people who are farther along, how to get to where they are. Building a product or a service, I think, is a great way to start when all you have is time. That's going to have a bunch of benefits. We talked about that in episode 12. Creating partnerships to leverage other people's money. That's going to be huge once you've got enough of a track record to know what you're talking about. And then you can start to work with investors on due diligence and acquisition allocation or portfolio management, to leverage their money, OPM is other people's money, to learn while also adding value to their career and their note investment business. And then finally, connecting vetted counterparties for a sourcing fee. Now this is a little bit more advanced, and I think it does require, it's very specific how you need to go about this, because it's very easy when you're trying to broker deals, when you're trying to connect counterparties, to put yourself into a position where you're not fulfilling the needs of the buyer and the seller. And a lot of times this creates daisy chains of different brokers trying to connect different buyers and sellers. At the end of the day, you need to be working with principal buyers and sellers. So what I always recommend to people who are trying to source notes for others to purchase is to focus on a specific value-adding portion of that business of connecting buyers and sellers. Whether that be vetting the sellers to make sure that your buyers are protected if they do choose to close these deals, or to work on the due diligence process, actually analyzing the loans that are for sale. Those extra value adds separate you from somebody who's just forwarding lists of assets to their whole entire downline and then expecting to get a deal done. You need to have that personal touch. All right, so if you've got more money though, you've got a little bit more options here. You can invest in a note fund or a passive partnership. Both of those options are available from a bunch of different companies. I'll just name one, PPR, Partners for Payment Relief. They've been around for a long time. Dave Van Horn is an excellent industry knowledge center, and he's got a lot of great things to share with this space. So I would highly recommend them. They have both reperforming loans for sale, and they also have a fund, I think, that pays 8%. A passive partnership, your returns will be higher than a note fund, but maybe a little bit more risky because you'd be going into business with an investor who maybe does not have the vehicle to create a fund like PPR. But your returns will be higher if you're able to negotiate a partnership as opposed to just plugging yourself into a product, for example, that's already been created, like most note funds. Buying reperforming loans for cash flow is huge. Your returns are going to be stronger there if you own it yourself, and it's totally passive. Flipping non-performing loans by buying wholesale and selling retail, that's a possibility once you've got more like $1 million or more to deploy. And that's a pretty cool way to connect investors with specific subsets of an inventory of loans that are more suited to find resolutions. So at the end of the day, what we're doing is moving these assets, these mortgage notes, from banks or hedge funds or larger investors who are not able to address those borrowers in an individualized, compassionate, and at the end of the day, a win-win resolution, connecting those assets with investors who are maybe local to the accounts or more suited to handle that type of debt. So selling retail, that is an arbitrage type of opportunity, but it also does add value by connecting investors with the right assets. And then finally, you can scale your product or service that you built when you had more time than money by applying that capital to hiring and building automation. So this is kind of in order almost as to how you should approach this, but you can certainly skip around and jump ahead depending on your experience and your capital available to deploy. So time versus money, super huge equation to understand. But once we understand that, we can actually start applying some numbers to it. So when you're running the numbers, it's really about achieving financial independence. And there's something out there called the FIRE movement. It's a big deal on the internet, financial independence, retire early. They've got some good rules of thumb and some good concepts that we'll talk about in just a minute. But at the end of the day, some of the main things you need to do are to start by reducing expenses, because it's easiest to make a living, to finance your lifestyle with a note business if your lifestyle, if your expenses are lower to begin with. So lowering that target is super important and will allow you to retire earlier. And when I say retire, I really mean achieve financial independence. If you're like me, you're not really thinking about retirement in the same sense as someone else might. I'm always going to be doing things. I always want to pursue things. It's just a matter of having the freedom to choose to pursue things that maybe do not have any financial benefit. For example, this show. I put the show on for free because I have sources of income that support me. I do not have to sell hard to get you guys to buy my products or anything because I've already set that in place, which gives me freedom to do the things that I want to do. Okay, so also save as much money as possible. Maximizing compounding interest is so huge. Compounding interest is such a powerful force. And I mean, we live, as humans, we live finite lifespans, but even in the 80 to 100 years that we're going to live, compounding interest makes a massive difference. So save a lot, save early, save often, and that's going to set you up when you do have opportunities to increase your yield by buying assets that are cash flowing. You'll have that dry powder available to deploy. So after that, you want to diversify across income generating, safe haven, and speculative assets. So this is kind of a simplification, but I believe that those are the three main categories of assets that you could focus on. Income generating, obviously these are paying you monthly, either rental properties or performing mortgage notes, or dividend yielding stocks. Safe haven assets are bonds and precious metals and cash. And then speculative assets are like stocks and the high flying, riskier type of investments that you might have a big return on, like being an angel investor in a tech company, or you might blow up and not earn anything. But it's good to diversify across those different spheres, and we'll see that very soon in a spreadsheet I put together for you guys. So hang on for that. And we'll also talk about rebalancing when we get to that, rebalancing your portfolio regularly to reduce risk. So taking money off the table if any one of your investments grows to a point where it is more than, I think investors recommend like a 20% holding maximum in any specific asset class. And those can be tweaked based on your own age, your own goals, and your own track record, what you're looking for. At the end of the day, personally, I think investing in yourself, investing in your own business is going to be better than investing in any speculative assets. But different strokes, it depends on what you're looking for. And then of course, train your mind to gamify delayed gratification. This is huge, and it's something that I was kind of intrinsically not born into. My parents are very frugal and they're real estate investors, so I learned a lot from them. But it was more video games, honestly, and gamifying something just means to, a video game already is gamified by definition, but to apply those concepts of holding out, in a game that you're, like a role-playing game where you have resources and you spend those resources on items or weapons or something that's going to improve your ability as a player of that game, to save those resources until you're able to acquire the very best thing, for example, and in this case, to save your resources until you're able to acquire cash flowing assets as opposed to the small gratifications along the way. Delaying your gratification is going to allow you to afford better opportunities than if you seek that instant gratification. So to gamify that just means to set goals for yourself, make it fun to save money, and then to see those returns once you're able to deploy into different assets. A lot of games that helped me with that growing up were like Lemonade Tycoon, running a lemonade stand. It's super simple, there's not a lot of inputs, but by controlling your investments into building a bigger lemonade stand, you're able to focus on that delayed gratification in a way that's fun. And then by making that real life, you'll be able to save more and not have it hurt as much when you're putting away that money to invest later. A couple tips for you guys, using the FIRE rules of thumb, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. They have two main rules that we're going to talk about in this upcoming spreadsheet. One is to save 25 times your annual expenses. That'd be your target savings, 25 times what you spend every year. So if you spend 100 grand a year, saving $2.5 million will get you to the point where you're, or maybe 25 million, maybe I'm doing my math wrong there. No, 2.5, that will get you to the point where you're able to withdraw 4% of your total available investment, your retirement income, 4% per year, and still able to maintain your principal balance to live out to the end of your retirement. So we're going to talk about another freebie, the early retirement calculator, in just a minute. We're going to talk about the tech tips, and then we'll flip over to Excel, and I'll show you guys a freebie that you can download in the description below. All right, so as always, the tech tips, the tech overview. This slide kind of overviews some of the different services and products that we use to put together to make this business automated and efficient. So you need a capable PC and a Mac, you need a decent smartphone, and you need good internet connection. But once you have that, wherever you are, if you've got your equipment, you can connect to the internet, connect to all of these different software and web services to make this business super automated and very, very efficient. So today we're talking about Excel. because that's, I think, probably the most important one of these pieces of software to understand. Even when you deploy a CRM system like Podio, understanding how to export that data, manipulate it in Excel, and then re-import it is going to be imperative to properly analyzing loans, properly understanding different formulas. You can do some of this in Google Sheets, but Excel is going to be a source you can use offline for starters and has a little bit more power. So let's get over to that early retirement freebie. It's over here. So this is the diversified early retirement sheet that I put together for you. And then we've got another investment calculator for our case studies. So we'll talk about both of these. I'm going to, let's see if I can pull myself off to just make this screen bigger. Oh man, I put the intro stinger on. My apologies, wait for that to go. Let me turn that off. That's probably my biggest mistake on the show. I leave my transitions up too long. Okay, so this is the early retirement calculator, and I based this on something I found online, and then I tweaked it and made it appropriate for our situation here as note investors seeking early retirement. So right off the bat, these are your inputs. You want to plug in your monthly expenses, which are going to be annualized by multiplying by 12. And then the retire early number is going to be a factor of 25 times your expenses. So if you plug in your numbers here, you're going to start to see what's necessary to reach that age of freedom. So I plugged in some filler numbers here. We're just assuming you have a $50,000 portfolio in each of these different areas. And then I've estimated the net returns for these different subsets. So right off the bat, rental properties, I'm talking about maybe an 8% return. You can do better in some markets, you can do worse in other markets, but on average, I think an 8% net return is pretty fair for rental properties. For cash flowing notes, you're gonna have a stronger return around 12%. And then dividend stocks, once again, could be higher, could be lower, but I think 6% is pretty fair for dividend stocks. So what this is doing is giving us a monthly passive number by taking these net returns and then annualizing, or well, reverse annualizing them, making them monthly. So if you had a $50,000 portfolio in each of these, which is kind of unrealistic because rental properties are going to be more expensive. Obviously dividend stocks could be smaller denominations and notes could be smaller. So maybe it's not that bad. But as you increase these, let's say you buy a $200,000 property, that's going to add $1,000 per month of passive income to that initial amount of $50,000. These are very high level. I'm glossing over some things here, but at the end of the day, this sort of gives you a target. And if you can put these diversified buckets together, then you're able to define how long it's going to take with compounding interest to get to that age where you're able to live off of your investment holdings. So mess around with these numbers or plug in your actual portfolio and you can start to see how much you can expect in passive income and then how to proceed from there. Now we have safe haven assets. So these do have a return listed. Even though typically you wouldn't think of them as a positive return. Cash at 1.9% is because you can put your money into high yield savings accounts and earn almost 2%. You can of course tweak that down. You can even make it 0 if you wanted to, if you were putting it under your mattress. And that's going to change all your metrics. Metals, I strongly recommend purchasing physical silver, physical gold, physical platinum. I think silver is the most undervalued right now. Having these safe haven assets with a custodian that you trust, that is local to you, that you could drive to and withdraw your metal if you needed to, super important in my opinion. And obviously this is also not really any net return at all, but I did put somewhat of a return because on average, metals and bonds do outpace inflation and allow some return. So you could also plug them back to 0 just to be conservative, which will change all of your numbers, but it's all dynamic, so you can do that to fit your own situation. And then finally, we've got the speculative assets. So non-performing notes, I think you're gonna earn about a 40% return conservatively buying non-performing notes. And then stocks, I just for fun put a negative 10%. The stock market is super frothy right now. There's a lot of super high valued equities. And personally, I don't think your short-term return, and I say short-term, I mean like maybe 6 months to a year, I don't see it being super positive right now. So just to put it in there as a negative number makes it even more conservative. So you put all this together, and that gives you your total assets and then the resulting net return. So if we adjust something, let's say we buy a bunch more non-performing notes, buy 100 grand in non-performing notes, and that increases our return because we are allocating more to the speculative assets, which intrinsically have higher risk, but also higher return potential. So what I think is cool about using this to define your portfolio allocation is to determine a yield, a net return that you're looking for that is safe because it's diversified, but also meeting your goals. So if you are more risky, if you want to take chances, you could allocate a little bit more to non-performing notes or to stocks. That's going to reduce your return, in my opinion, though. And then for income generating accounts as well, you can focus more on cash flowing notes. So if I add some to my cash flowing portfolio, my total return is going to increase further. And actually it decreased because the percentage of cash flowing notes outpaced the percentage of non-performing notes. Our return is high right now on average because we've got a lot in the speculative bucket. So once you have all of this plugged in, you can use your own portfolio or you can plug in your goal portfolio. Then you can see at the 4% withdrawal rate how much you can withdraw per year right now, which would be 4% of your total assets. If you could live on $16,000 a year, you could retire with a $400,000 portfolio. That's $1,300 a month. If that fits your needs, and like I said, if you reduce your expenses, you can meet these numbers a lot sooner. That would let you retire in 9 years with this compounding. So there's a whole bunch of different things you can tweak in here to fit your own situation and to understand where you need to be to earn this passive income through a diversified portfolio. And the reason why we're talking, I did it again, guys. I put the stinger on. I thought I switched that off. I'm so sorry. So depending on your own goals, I would definitely recommend playing with this and putting it into context of your own situation. And I did include a little bit more than just notes on this sheet because in any asset class, you do not want to put all your eggs in one basket. I know this is a mortgage notes program and that's what we're excited about, but just as mortgage notes are paying off as the principal balance is reduced, rental properties typically increase in value. So by having both appreciating assets and mortgage notes that are paid down over time, you're able to have these opposite yield curves where you're able to earn more on your rental properties over time as your notes are paid off. So definitely want to diversify and stress that because it's super important. All right, so back to the show. We're going to start into assets for sale. So we've got a whole bunch of new loans on the market now. I actually put out over 100 new assets a week ago. If you were on my list from the non-disclosure agreement, you got an email about all of the new loans for sale. And like I said in the beginning of the show, we received 112 offers so far. So I've got my work cut out for me at the moment to go through all of those. Oh my gosh, I did it again, guys. The stinger transition. All right, I'm turning it off. Turning it off. I'm so sorry. All right. Oh, that's why. Cool. So these new notes for sale, I think at this point I'm going to have to go through all of the offers. If you have any trailing offers today, I'll still be able to review them. But if you're a little late on getting together new bids, I would recommend waiting until our next update. I'll send an email once I've went through the latest offers. Just so that we're able to talk about a refreshed inventory. You're not wasting your time looking at loans that are already committed to other potential buyers. So we'll show you a quick process on how to sign up for the list. And it's pretty easy. You go over to Buy Notes at the top. Click that. You'll go through the Sign NDA for Access button. Fill out your information there. You'll get an email with the non-disclosure agreement to sign along with login details for the website. Once you've signed that, you'll get the notification that it's been executed. You'll receive an update on your membership, so now you can review notes for sale. Now you can click on Buy Notes again, or My Account actually first, and you'll see that you are granted course plus inventory access. And then when you click on Buy Notes, it'll take you to a new page with the unmasked inventory, all of the loans for sale with all of the information you need to analyze them. and some short instructions on how to make your offer. So super easy to get started there, and even if you're not ready to buy loans right this instant, I would highly recommend going through that process anyway, because that's going to give you a lot more confidence with due diligence, analysis, and analyzing assets for sale. So today's case study, I got a new format for case study I'm very excited to show you guys. And right off the bat, I'm a little screwy here with the overlay. But today's case study is a non-performing second lien secured by a single-family residential property. We settled it through a discounted payoff. The fair market value is $120,320, and at acquisition, the senior was unknown. That means the equity is unknown. We don't know how much is owed to the first position debt. It's a very small balance loan, $4,388 is the entire balance owed. So it wasn't at the very top of our list as far as triage and asset analysis is concerned. We're going to focus on the highest balance loans when we buy a large portfolio of debt. And then some of the lower loans, lower value loans, are going to slip through the cracks. For example, this one at acquisition, we did not review all of the potential sources of senior lien data because it wasn't a high priority account. Now, once you look at credit, you mostly will have your senior lien detail. But if it's not on credit, you need to go to public records, see if there's any foreclosure actions on title, and then pursue, all possible avenues of gathering that information, which would include finding the servicer from the public record who is, you find the lender through the public record who's been assigned the debt, and then you can use tools like MERS Servicer ID, if it's a MERS account, to check the servicer who's actually of record on that account. And then you can go through some additional steps to call up a loan servicer, go through their automated phone system to see if you're able to get that senior lien detail in a way that's not on the credit report. And we can talk about that in more detail. We've talked about it kind of at a high level before, but different ways to gather senior lien status, super important for junior lien investors to understand. But in this case, we're talking about a loan that has an unknown senior status, paid off $4,000. All right, so we ask 3 questions, and you guys know these 3 questions when we are collecting on a mortgage note. What happened? Where are you now? And what do you want to do? These questions are so important because they frame the conversation in a way that benefits the borrower. And if you have these answers from the borrower, you're able to craft a resolution that fits their situation, that's affordable to them, and that makes sense to your investment as well. So the answers to those questions: what happened? The borrower was divorced to their co-borrower, and they lost track of this account. There's a lot of filings and divorce proceedings that got in the way. This account slipped under the rug, got lost in the shuffle, and it was not paid for several years. At this point, the co-borrower is still living in the property. Did not speak with the co-borrower at all. We talked to the borrower, and they actually wanted to pay off the loan even though they didn't live in the property anymore. They wanted to make it a little easier for the divorce settlement. They were going to pay off the loan that was secured by the property that the co-borrower was living in. It's a lot of good faith in the court, I'm sure. And at the end of the day, it was a generous offer, generous divorce terms, according to the borrower I spoke with. So 3 months later, there was no communication between the borrower and the co-borrower. It was contingent. Our payoff was contingent on the borrower getting these divorce proceedings approved. But a couple more months after that, our initial discounted payoff offer of $3,388 had expired. And at that point, there was another opportunity because the borrower had a different property that was refinancing. They had the funds available and they were ready to settle for a new discounted payoff of $4,000. So we closed this discounted payoff just this past month for $4,000. Following the refinance, he had the funds available and was able to pay us off. So at the end of the day, this loan cost us $1,980, which is about 45% of the UPB. A little bit on the high end, even though it's an unknown senior lien, because of the fact, and I didn't show this here, but the origination amount of the senior already had equity. It was less than $100,000. So because of the small balance and the amount of equity assumed in this situation, it was a more expensive account. You could probably get that for a lot less though as part of a package. And by the way, this was not the price that my client paid on the loan, this would be the price you'd expect to pay as a one-off. And I'm using a one-off number because it's the most conservative way to, oh look, I'm in the way again. It's the most conservative way to look at this account and still show that it is a profitable file, whereas with a bulk purchase, you'd have a much lower expense to pick it up. So in 9 months, in $215 of expenses through the due diligence, the onboarding, and the collections process, we were able to reach that payoff of $4,000, 91% of the unpaid principal balance, and at the end of the day, make some money here. So some takeaways for you. First, to establish rapport, empathize and encourage that honest conversation. In this case, the borrower is going through a rough time, and to empathize with that and to get on the same page is super important to building that relationship for the follow-ups. Because if this borrower did not feel like we were on the same page, he might not have been as likely to follow up with me as things were developing on his end. Very important to establish rapport, to empathize and encourage that positive conversation. Hey, thank you so much, Nick, for, actually I wanted to tell you guys, Nick, VentureWorks, he just made a comment. He was super helpful in giving me some feedback on the template for our case studies to include some more about the expenses and a little bit more about what to expect when you're buying these loans. Stay vigilant is my next takeaway here, to set dates to follow up with your borrowers. You want to make sure that it's a little bit of tough love, but when you set a date and a date is not met, you need to follow up and be firm with the next steps. An expired discounted payoff, for example, needs to be increased to establish urgency. If we told him when he called me back up, oh, the balance is the same amount, $3,388, that would have had no urgency and could have potentially extended the deal a lot longer because he wouldn't understand that there is a time value of money. The investor is going to start accruing arrears and interest on the account. The discounted payoff that's available today is not going to be available in the future. So make sure when you ever put a discounted payoff offer together, it has a date, an expiration date, so there's no confusion about that amount being expired and increasing in the future. And then velocity of money is a nice thing to touch here as well, because an earlier discounted payoff is the biggest win-win. So not only is the borrower be able to pay less, but our return is actually higher. Even though we made more money by waiting, the time value of money reversed that yield. And we'll see that in the spreadsheet we're going to show you in just a minute. So that was 137% net internal rate of return if you bought this at a one-off at $1,980. So huge return if you can get this done in a timely amount. And we'll go over to the simple investment calculator and dig into that a little bit more. So that was part of Nick's feedback. He wanted to see a little bit more detail, and not only the expenses, but also some of the metrics. So I'm going to pull myself off the list, and I turned off my transition, fortunately. And we'll zoom in a little bit as well. So this is a similar calculator that we used in previous episodes. It's been adjusted for these two case studies. So we'll first start with that acquisition price of $1,980. We've roughly estimated $100 of due diligence. It was a lot less in actuality because it was purchased as a large portfolio. If you review this as a one-off though, you'd expect to spend about $100 analyzing it. And let's look at the original plan. So we spend the money, the $1,980 plus the $100 of due diligence in December of 2019. Then in January, we spent $10 onboarding the loan with our servicer. And then the next month, our monthly servicing fee of $15 kicks in. And then it only took 4 months from start to finish, and we received $3,388 if the plan went according to the original intention. It did not. The actual result here was a $4,000 discounted payoff in September. So add 5 more months, and then we got the $4,000. So 5 more months of $15 a month, and 5 more months of holding costs, the time value of money there. So look at these IRRs. Even though the first option was a couple $100 less, the 400% internal rate of return would have been achieved because of that really quick payoff. Whereas with the longer term, the 9-month approach, 137%. These formulas are super simple. It's called XIRR. It's how you calculate the internal rate of return in Excel by basically just 2 different, I forget what these are called, subsets of the data. One is the outflow and inflow of cash, and the other is the dates. So if you plug in any of your own investments into the same template, and then if it takes longer, you drag it all the way out, that will give you the internal rate of return based on any number of different scenarios. So that's why that one takeaway, the internal rate of return, that time value of money, super important. The velocity will definitely increase your return substantially. So let's go to the next case study here, because I got more of the spreadsheet to show you for reperforming loans. So this one is a modification, a non-performing second lien secured by a single family home that has a value now of over $40,000. So the fair market value to begin with is $290,600, and we've got a senior lien of $21,985. So we've got so much equity in this account protecting our second position debt. $268,000 of equity, to be exact, secured by our debt of $48,000. So we are well covered in the event of the senior going to foreclosure, for example. Even if they racked up another $100,000 of senior lien legal fees, we would still be in the money to receive a surplus payoff at the eventual foreclosure sale. The good news though, when we asked those three questions, what happened, where are you now, and what do you want to do, was the borrower did want to come to terms and settle with a modification to pay the loan off over time. So what happened first was the borrower told me they were paying $287 a month with the bank at 0% interest. It's like, oh, well, can you prove that? Do you have the documents? And that might have been true that they were making those payments, but at the end of the day, that was not an effective modification. That was not documented. It was not recorded in the county records. It was not a valid approach. We bought the loan as a non-performing debt in default, so our terms, our negotiations have started at the ground level again. So we wanted to, the borrower wanted to keep the loan current, so she offered $350 per month right off the bat. She could pay more than that $287 that she was paying before, but it wasn't enough to hit our metrics. And because of the amount of equity, we had a little bit more leverage on this deal to negotiate. So our counter was a $498 per month payment plan. There'd be a $250 modification fee, but no down payment. So she could get the loan current right away just by starting that $498 per month and the $250 mod fee. So we completed the mod, we got ACH documents in, the automatic clearinghouse, so that we'd receive monthly payments every single month from the borrower's bank account directly. But the ACH bounced. We were actually, after the first month, realized that our banking account instructions were wrong. The $250 modification fee was sent in by check, so that had cleared. But the first payment on ACH showed us that there was a typo in the bank instructions. So we had to follow up, get the correct bank information. One thing I missed here, we also made sure to get the borrower to add the client, the lender, the note holder, as additionally insured on the property insurance, and that protects the lender in the case of any insurance claims. So what do you want to do? A fixed rate modification for $498 per month for 14 years at 8.75% interest. So higher interest than you might typically expect, especially in the low rate environment that we're currently in. But because this was a non-performing defaulted loan, the interest rate that we were able to offer was higher. We could potentially negotiated that a little bit, but that's normally like the standard rate that we start with. And in this case, the borrower accepted the terms and we moved forward with that modification. So spending $27,000 on this loan, 56% of the unpaid principal balance would be a fair price as a non-performing loan. Because this has so much equity, because the senior lien is current, you're going to be paying upwards of 50, 55, even 60% of the balance for a loan like this. Now, if we go through the life cycle here, it took 11 months, $475 of expenses, and that includes our due diligence, our onboarding, our collection fees, and a modification fee, to reach a reperforming loan value of $41,226. So let me show you how we determined that that was the value of the reperforming loan after the takeaways. So previous agreements with other lenders are only valid if documented and successfully performed. A lot of borrowers will tell us when we offer a discounted payoff, the bank offered me to settle my debt for $1,000 last year. Why are you asking for $10,000? Well, unfortunately, the bank's offer has expired, and that's no longer on the table. We're looking at the account today and the terms that are available to you. So at the end of the day, they could only continue those terms if they were documented and they had performed on the terms. An acceptable monthly payment amount is the RPL yield versus the NPL value. So to unpack this just a bit before we go to the spreadsheet to really understand it, you cannot accept a monthly payment that's going to result in a yield that's lower than the non-performing value of the loan. So for example, this loan is worth $27,200 as a non-performing loan. If I do some simple math here, $27,200 and take the $200 monthly payment, for example, times 12, divided by the 27,200, that's an 8% yield. So if this borrower was only paying 200 bucks a month, we would only be earning 8% on our money, when in reality, the loan is worth just that much as a non-performer. So sometimes when you get into a modification discussion, the borrower might only be able to afford 100, 150, 200 bucks, but it's worth more as a non-performing loan. That puts you in a tough situation as a note investor. So there's a couple different ways to handle that. One would be to work towards a sale of the property. And in this case, a sale of the property is, at the end of the day, the thing the borrower needs to do if they cannot afford to pay the loans. They have plenty of equity. They're going to make some money at the sale. It's not the end of the world. They can move into a home that's going to be more affordable and fit their budget. But if they can make the payments, and in this case, we set the payment amount at a number that would justify the reperforming loan price, then you've got the leverage to make that the option that's available. Otherwise, sell the property. So we're going to jump over to the spreadsheet well, after these two other takeaways. Monitor your portfolio for cash flow. In this case, the ACH bounced. We wouldn't have known that unless we were monitoring closely. Good question, Rakesh. Can they refinance? Yes. So one super important thing, and I showed this in the last takeaway, there's no prepayment penalties. We've encouraged a refinance for an increased internal rate of return. And because the rate is high, the borrower is very incentivized to refinance at these historically low interest rates. So we never we never require a prepayment penalty so that borrowers are able to take advantage of the low rate environment that we live in. Once they're able to build a track record on the refi, then a bank that wants to process the new loan will come to us as the previous lender, ask for our payment history, make sure that the borrower is current and paying as agreed, which would allow them to refinance. They wouldn't be able to refinance today because they've got a non-performing second, but with some seasoning, they will be able to refinance. So very important. Now at the reperforming loan value of $41,226, that's a 11.6% internal rate of return for the reperforming loan buyer and a 56% internal rate of return for the non-performing loan investor who fixed and flipped this deal. So let's jump over to that spreadsheet again and go over to case study number 2. The payment amount of $498, servicing fee of 15 bucks a month, balance, term, interest rate. All right, so the non-performing loan purchase price, as we discussed, was $27,200. I guess I'm not covering up anything here, but I am going to pull myself off so you guys can see a little bit better, and we'll zoom in a little bit more. So if we take these two numbers, the $27,000 non-performing purchase price and the $41,000 reperforming loan price, if we sell it in 11 months, then we can get this simple internal rate of return. This is a pretty simple equation. It's your ROI, which is just your terminal value, the reperforming sale price, minus the non-performing sale price, divided by the purchase price to get your return on investment. And then that is taken into account of the time value of money by dividing the amount of months to completion to annualize it. So this is just telling us that in 11 months, it would be a 56% return. If we did it in a full year, it's 51.6%. That's your return on investment. But because it's a little bit shorter, it's improved. So these scenarios, just the same as before, it uses a string of dates and a string of cash flows, and then uses the XIRR. Oops, that's just the cash on cash yield. The XIRR to account for the full life cycle of the entire loan. And the reason this one goes all the way out is because this is the scenario of paying to maturity, all 168 payments. And then eventually, if you go all the way out to the end here, it ends in nothing. Because they make their last payment, it's fully amortized, the loan is paid off. Now that offers the loan investor a 14.1% cash on cash return because they're earning $483 net per month divided by their purchase price. So every year they're earning 14% of their investment back. But that's kind of misleading because it doesn't account for the full life cycle, which would result in an 11.6% internal rate of return. But if you refinance in January of 2023 and you spend $41,000, you collect your $483, bunch of months, that's your net payment amount, and then you get that $41,000 kicker in the refinance in a couple years. So this is the amortization. We pulled this off the amortization schedule after these consistent payments in January of 2023. This would be the amount that's still owed. So if you take that same formula, but it ends in the terminal value, 41,000, then you get a 14.7% yield. And the earlier you get your full payoff, the higher your internal rate of return is going to be. So in this case, I would expect it to refinance a lot sooner. I don't think it's going to pay to maturity because of the high interest rate. So a note investor who purchases this as a reperforming loan can expect between 12 to 15% internal rate of return when the borrower does refi. So hopefully these two examples can give you a launch pad in order to plug in your own deals and then see where the internal rate of return, the cash on cash return, your value as a fix and flip investor, if you're buying non-performing and selling reperforming, where you fit in based on those numbers. So feel free to adapt that however you like. You can download it in the description below. All right, that's it, guys. Of course, giveaways. Every week we offer a 15-minute consultation. We have not done one in this past week. We did a couple good ones previously, but we need to get on a call soon. So after the show's over, please leave a comment below and you could qualify for this 15-minute consultation. Let me quickly address Rakesh's question on the last, we'll swipe over to that. On January 1st, 2023, the investor will not be collecting the full amount as part of this payment includes principal. Well, yes, it includes principal. This is only principal. In the regular monthly payments, they're paying principal and interest. But when you get to the very end of the, when you actually get the payoff quote and you have a refinance potential, that's all principal balance. That's 100% principal balance. Well, actually, no, you are correct. It's very small amount of interest because of the payment that would have been due on January 1st, 2023. But that is majority, like 99% principal balance that's paid off at the end of the term. All right, so in order to qualify for the 15-minute consultation, you need to subscribe to the channel, you need to like this video, and leave a comment once the live presentation is over. And that will allow other investors who are reviewing these videos going forward to get some context with your comment. I really try to answer all of the comments when I can to help provide more information if you do have any questions when you're reviewing it. So please leave a comment with any questions or comments, and then sign up at FIXnotes.com/buy so I have all your information and I can reach out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I think that my new templates here for the case studies need a little bit more polishing, but I think it's going to provide a little bit more context for you going forward. So I hope the next week will be a little smoother with the new slides, the new transitions. But in any case, I hope you still were able to get some value out of it. So I'm gonna run out back. We didn't even look at the koi today. Let's take a quick look at those guys. They look hungry, don't they? We're gonna go out there and feed the fish to call it a day today. We've been streaming now for an hour and 12 minutes, a little over an hour this week. And I hope that it was helpful. And like I said, leave a comment, please. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you out back. All right, let's get going. Thank you for watching. And right, guys, time to eat. All right, come on over here, little fishy friends. We've got food for you. We didn't see a lot of birds today, guys. I'm sorry it was a little slow. I think this winter is going to be interesting because the fish are going to hibernate, so we're not going to have the koi cam. You can't feed koi in the winter because they can't digest food in lower temperature water. So we're not going to have the koi cam. The birds are going to be probably hibernating as well. Maybe we'll see a whole different set of birds. This is our first full winter at this house. We just moved in January. So it's going to be interesting to see the changing of the seasons here. But we'll figure it out. We'll have hopefully have an entertaining show for you nonetheless. Thanks again for watching, and like I said, leave a comment with any questions you have. I'd be happy to help. You can reach out to me on Facebook or here on YouTube. We got an Instagram account as well for Be The Bank, which we're not super active on, but you're welcome to check out some of the content that we've posted on Instagram as well. It's Be The Bank, B.the.bank. Let's see if I can pick one up. They're so nice. These fish are the friendliest. This big one's a little scared though. All right, guys, have a great day, great rest of your week. Please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything at all. If you have any questions about this business, I'd be happy to help. That's why I'm here. Look forward to seeing you next time.